The hall was already busy before she arrived. Chairs scraped the floor, voices mixed together, and the sound of footsteps echoed from every corner. It was the kind of place where people came and went without really looking at each other. Some were waiting for an event to begin, some were just passing time, and some were there only because they had nowhere else to go for a while. In one corner of the room stood an old piano. Its surface was scratched, the color faded from years of use, but it was still standing, still waiting. She walked in quietly, carrying nothing but herself. No one noticed her at first. She did not stand out in any way. Her clothes were simple, clean but worn from use. Her hair was tied back without much thought, as if she had done it quickly before leaving home. Her eyes moved around the room, not searching for attention, but simply taking everything in. She looked like someone who had learned long ago how to stay unnoticed. The piano seemed to catch her attention more than anything else. She slowed her steps as she moved toward it. A few people glanced at her, then looked away again. They assumed she was like anyone else, maybe someone curious, maybe someone waiting for time to pass. No one thought she was there to do something important. She stood beside the piano for a moment, resting her hand lightly on its edge. The wood felt cool under her fingers. It was familiar in a way that brought a quiet calm to her chest. She had touched many pianos before, some better, some worse, but this feeling was always the same. A small breath left her lips as if she were greeting an old friend. She sat down slowly on the bench, creaked softly under her weight. A man nearby glanced over, then returned to his phone. A group in the back continued talking. The room stayed noisy, careless, alive with everything except her presence. She lifted the lid and looked at the keys. Some were slightly yellow, others chipped at the edges. They were not perfect, but neither was life. Her fingers hovered above them, not touching yet. This pause was not for the audience. It was for herself. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the noise around her fade into the background. Her first notes were quiet, so quiet that many people did not even realize music had begun. A simple scale, slow and careful. Her fingers moved with ease, as if they knew exactly where to go without being told. It was only a warm-up, nothing special, nothing dramatic. Just sound, soft and gentle. Someone close by tilted their head, confused for a second, then smiled politely. It sounded like practice, like someone checking the piano before a real performance. No one clapped. No one moved closer. That was fine with her. She was not playing for them yet. She continued, letting her hands stretch and settle. Each note landed where it should, clean and steady. There was no rush. The rhythm was slow, almost thoughtful. Her shoulders relaxed with every breath. This was her space now, even if the room did not know it. As she played, memories moved quietly through her mind. Early mornings when the world was still asleep. Late nights when tired hands still reached for the keys. Rooms where the lights barely worked. Moments when doubt whispered that no one would ever care. Through it all, the piano had been there. It never asked questions. It only waited. The sound in the room began to change, though most people did not notice right away. Conversations softened slightly. A few heads turned again, this time holding their gaze a little longer. There was something calm in the way she played, something steady that made the noise around her feel out of place. She shifted into a different warm-up pattern, adding gentle chords beneath the melody. Still simple, still quiet, but fuller now. The piano responded better than expected. It was old, but it still had a voice. A woman near the front stopped talking mid-sentence. She listened for a moment, then sat back in her chair. She didn't know why, but she felt like interrupting would be wrong. A young boy tugged at his guardian's sleeve and pointed toward the piano. The guardian nodded without really understanding why. She kept her eyes on the keys. Her face showed no strong emotion, only focus. This was the part she always loved. The moment before everything else. The moment where it was just her and the sound. No pressure, no judgment, just connection. Her hands moved slightly faster now, still controlled, still warm-up notes, but with confidence hiding beneath them. Anyone who truly listened could hear it. This was not someone guessing. This was someone who knew exactly what she was doing. The room grew quieter without anyone asking it to. Phones were lowered. Voices faded. The piano did not need to fight for attention anymore. It was earning it. She paused for half a second, letting the last note fade. That pause felt heavier than the music itself. A few people thought she was done and shifted in their seats. But she was not done. Not even close. She took a deeper breath this time. Her fingers rested on the keys with purpose. The gentle warm-up had done its job. Her hands were ready. Her heart was steady. The room was finally listening. No one yet knew what was coming. They only knew that something had changed. The air felt different, like the moment before a storm when everything goes still. She lowered her hands again, and the first true note waited just beneath her fingertips. The soft pause after her warm-up had drawn the attention of a few people in the hall. They leaned in slightly, curious now, though no one moved too close. The boy who had pointed at her earlier was still wide-eyed, watching as her fingers hovered over the keys. There was something calm and deliberate about the way she prepared herself. It was different from the usual performances people had seen, where musicians often made big gestures or sought attention. She did not need that. Her focus was quiet, but it had a presence of its own. She began again, this time with a slightly more complex sequence. The notes were still gentle, but the rhythm hinted at her experience. It was subtle. To most people, it still sounded like practice. But anyone who knew music could feel it. The control, the patience, the confidence that had been earned through years of dedication. Her fingers moved as if they remembered every lesson, every hour of struggle, every moment of joy that the piano had offered her. The room grew quieter. The chatter that had filled the corners faded away. Someone tried to whisper a comment to their companion but stopped when they realized they couldn't speak over the sound. The soft, deliberate notes had a way of demanding attention without shouting. They pulled people in slowly, like a story unfolding one sentence at a time. Her hands shifted across the keys, exploring patterns that were not yet melody but hinted at what was possible. She was warming up her mind and body at the same time. Every movement was precise. Every pause was intentional. There was a subtle flow that only someone who had truly lived with music for years could create. She did not need to impress anyone. She needed to feel the music, to let it flow through her, and somehow that was enough to make everyone else take notice. The boy in the corner tugged at the edge of the bench, wanting to get closer, but a hand on his shoulder held him back. The guardian noticed the careful look in his eyes and smiled faintly. They didn't understand it completely, but they felt the change too. The room had grown smaller somehow, focused entirely on the piano. The air felt thicker, yet lighter at the same time, as though the music had made room for itself. She paused again, her hands hovering, almost waiting. This pause was not long, but it had weight. People leaned forward in their seats, some unconsciously. They had begun to sense that something more was coming, even if they could not yet imagine it. The room was no longer just a space for casual gathering. It was a space for attention, for presence, for quiet anticipation. Her next movements were a touch faster. The notes blended together, creating soft patterns that seemed to ripple across the room. They were not loud, but they were not simple anymore. There was complexity in the spacing, in the timing, in the small crescendos she allowed to rise naturally. It was as if she were speaking without words, telling a story only music could carry. Her fingers danced lightly, each one aware of its place, each one moving with confidence born of years of practice. A few adults exchanged glances, curiosity mixed with surprise. They had come expecting background noise, an ordinary rehearsal perhaps, but instead they were witnessing something subtle and profound. They did not know the details of her life, nor did they need to. The expression in her movements, the control of her touch, the careful shaping of sound. It was enough to show her depth. She continued for a while, her hands moving in patterns that were unfamiliar but not chaotic. They were intentional, building quietly. The melody had not arrived yet, but the audience was ready, unwittingly drawn in by the promise of something greater. The room had become a place where ordinary distractions faded. Phones remained in laps, conversations halted, and all eyes, even those that did not understand music, were subtly focused. She allowed herself a small smile, though no one could see it clearly. She felt the connection. The gentle warm-up had done its work. She could sense the room adjusting, preparing to receive something more than practice. It was an unspoken readiness, the kind that only forms when presence meets skill without effort, without forcing it. It was a rare moment of alignment between a performer and an audience, even an accidental one. Her movements became slightly more expressive, still restrained, but hints of emotion began to appear in the gentle rises and falls of the notes. She was telling her story in fragments, as if inviting the audience to imagine the rest. There was sadness in some sequences, quiet triumph in others, and a patient hope that lingered in every pause. Those who were listening could feel it, even if they could not name it. Music had a way of speaking what words could not. The boy in the corner leaned closer again, curiosity mixed with wonder. He had never heard anything quite like it. The guardian, sensing his fascination, allowed him a small movement forward. They both watched, silent, letting the music fill the space between them. It was almost magical how a few soft notes could still command attention without demanding it. She played on, slowly bringing her hands into higher and lower octaves, testing the range of the old piano. It responded surprisingly well, given its age. Some keys were sticky, some softer than others, but she adjusted instinctively, never breaking the flow. Her fingers moved with confidence, aware of every imperfection and using it to create subtle nuance. The music was alive, breathing with the room, growing more intricate as she continued. The subtle patterns became more noticeable now. A chord here, a gentle trill there, a pause that lingered just long enough to make the listener want more. The audience began to lean in collectively. They were not clapping or cheering yet, but the shift in attention was palpable. Even without realizing it, they had begun to respect the space she had claimed. She paused for another brief moment, as if listening to her own playing from a distance. This time, the pause was longer, deliberate. It was a technique she had learned over years, to let the silence speak, to let anticipation grow. People felt it. They knew something was coming, though they could not yet predict what it would be. The air felt charged in a quiet way, a tension that held everyone's focus. She breathed deeply, feeling her heart steady. The warm-up was done, the subtle patterns had prepared the ground. Her fingers relaxed and hovered again. The room waited unknowingly for the moment when the music would rise beyond practice, beyond mere warm-up. There was a calm before the storm, a soft expectation that touched everyone present. In that quiet pause, she remembered the countless hours spent in practice rooms, in small apartments, in empty halls. She thought of the mentors who had taught her patience, the moments of doubt that had challenged her, and the small victories that had kept her going. All of that experience was invisible, yet it had shaped every movement, every note, every pause. The music was not just sound. It was her life, condensed into moments that only she could express. She looked up briefly, not at anyone in particular, just letting her gaze wander. The audience had no faces yet. They were not yet individuals, just a collective presence in the hall. She was aware of them now, but not distracted. They were part of the space, but they did not own it. She owned it with her skill, her focus, her intent. Her hands finally settled into a position ready for the next phase. The gentle warm-up had created a foundation. She had tested the piano, tested herself, and now she was poised. The first soft chords of the story she was about to tell in earnest were waiting. The room was ready even if the people themselves were not. Something significant was about to happen, and it began with a single, confident touch. The moment came without warning. What had started as gentle, careful notes now began to rise in intensity. The quiet patterns she had been weaving suddenly transformed into a flowing melody that filled the room in a way the audience had not anticipated. The soft hum of the piano grew into a confident voice, commanding attention, drawing every eye and ear toward her. The people who had been leaning back in their seats, listening politely, now found themselves caught in a wave they did not expect. Her hands moved across the keys with certainty and purpose. The notes seemed to dance in the air, touching the walls, the ceiling, the edges of the room. Each chord had depth and weight, yet there was grace in every movement. The boy in the corner pressed his hands together, his small face reflecting awe. The guardian near him leaned forward, sensing something extraordinary. Even those who had been distracted or uninterested before were now fully engaged, unable to look away or ignore the sound. The melody was not just strong, it was alive. It rose and fell, stretched and compressed, as if she were speaking without words. Her fingers moved so fast at times, yet never missed a note. The piano seemed to respond to her every intention, carrying the music forward in a way that felt natural and powerful. It was not just practice anymore. It was storytelling, emotion poured into sound. A few people gasped quietly, not out of fear, but out of surprise. They had not expected such mastery from someone who had seemed so calm, so ordinary at first. It was a reminder that appearances could be deceiving, that talent could arrive quietly and then explode into presence. The room seemed to shrink around her, the music creating a private space where only she and the piano mattered. She did not look at anyone. Her focus was total, absorbed in the relationship between her hands and the keys. Every pause, every rise in tempo, every subtle change in tone was intentional. The audience could feel it, even if they could not understand exactly what she was doing. Music had a way of speaking to people directly, bypassing language, touching something deep inside. The melody shifted now, moving from low, resonant chords to higher, sharper notes that sparkled in the air. The contrast brought new energy, keeping the audience on edge in the most pleasant way. It was as if she were painting a picture in sound, the colors vivid and changing with every movement. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It had become an extension of her voice, telling a story that everyone could feel. She leaned slightly forward, her hair falling a little over her face, but her hands never slowed. The music grew in confidence, building in intensity, yet never losing control. Each note mattered, each chord was carefully placed, yet the flow never felt mechanical. It was the kind of performance that made people realize skill and emotion could coexist perfectly, that years of practice could lead to moments of pure magic. Some in the audience began recording on their phones, but even they lowered them at times, just to experience the music fully. Others were frozen in place, holding their breath, afraid to disturb the delicate spell she had cast over the room. The boy's eyes were wide, shining with excitement, while the guardian's expression shifted between amazement and admiration. Even the most skeptical listener could not deny the impact of what was happening. She moved into a section of the music that was both fast and intricate. Her fingers flew across the keys, tapping rhythms that seemed almost impossible, yet were executed flawlessly. The piano sang under her touch, the sound vibrant and alive. The room seemed to pulse with the music, every person's heartbeat somehow matching the tempo of the notes. The energy was tangible, a shared experience of wonder and beauty. She allowed herself to feel the music fully, letting emotion guide her, not just technique. The melody became expressive, revealing joy, sorrow, hope, and determination all at once. The audience could feel these shifts, sensing the story embedded in the sound. Each rise and fall of the music carried meaning, a reflection of struggles overcome and dreams pursued. It was more than skill. It was life itself, translated through the piano. The boy in the corner whispered, almost to himself, "It's amazing." His voice was soft, but it captured exactly what everyone else was feeling. The guardian placed a hand on his shoulder, nodding, unable to find words. They were witnesses to a rare moment, a glimpse into a talent so genuine that it could stop a room and hold it suspended in awe. She reached a climax in the piece, the music swelling with intensity. It was powerful without being harsh, commanding without being aggressive. Every note was perfectly balanced, every chord shaped to enhance the story she was telling. The audience could feel the tension, the release, the emotion, all woven together in an intricate dance of sound. It was a performance that made time feel slower, stretching every second to allow the full weight of the music to settle in. Some people leaned closer, unable to resist the pull. Others sat back, letting the sound wash over them, savoring every moment. The boy's small hands clutched the edge of the bench as he tried to absorb it all. The guardian's eyes were moist, reflecting the soft light of the hall. Everyone was affected in different ways by the sheer presence of her playing. She did not rush the ending. The melody lingered, letting the final notes echo in the room. The piano spoke one last time, soft and deliberate, as if saying goodbye. Her fingers lifted slowly, and she allowed silence to take over. For a moment, there was nothing but the quiet hum of the hall, a perfect counterpoint to the music that had just filled it. Then came the reaction. Gasps, whispers, and finally applause. People rose to their feet, clapping with a mixture of excitement and respect. The sound seemed almost hesitant at first, as if no one wanted to break the magic. Then it grew louder, stronger, unstoppable. She rose from the bench, acknowledging the audience with a humble nod, but without letting pride take over. She had shared her gift, and the room had responded fully. People came closer, asking questions, praising her, or just standing in stunned silence. Some wanted to know how she had learned to play like that. Others simply wanted to bask in the afterglow, to feel the echoes of what they had just witnessed. She accepted it all quietly, letting their admiration exist without needing it to define her. In the back, the boy whispered again, "I want to play like that someday." His words were small, but they held weight. They reflected a truth everyone could feel. Talent, discipline, and passion combined in the most extraordinary ways when someone truly cared. She smiled faintly at him, understanding the depth of what he had said. The hall slowly returned to normal. People spoke in hushed tones, trying to process what had just happened. Some walked away still shaking their heads, still amazed. Some lingered, hoping to capture just a few more moments of that brilliance. The piano, now quiet, seemed to rest too, having shared its voice so fully and completely. She stood there, letting the applause fade, her mind returning to calm. The experience was not about recognition. It was about sharing a part of herself through the music. Every note had been honest, every chord intentional, and every pause meaningful. She had transformed a simple warm-up into a moment that touched everyone present. And even as the hall settled back into ordinary life, the memory of her playing lingered, leaving a quiet impact on all who had witnessed it. The applause gradually softened, but the energy in the room did not fade. People were still leaning forward, whispering to each other in hushed tones, trying to make sense of what they had just experienced. The boy in the corner was still wide-eyed, his small hands fidgeting with excitement. He kept glancing at the piano, as if hoping she might play just one more note. The guardian beside him simply nodded repeatedly, unable to find words that could capture what they felt. It was one of those rare moments when people realized they had witnessed something extraordinary. She remained at the piano, letting the silence fill the room. The calm that followed the music was almost as powerful as the notes themselves. People noticed the way she looked at the keys, her hands resting lightly, her posture relaxed but confident. It was as if she had just shared a part of herself and now allowed everyone to digest it in their own way. There was no rush, no expectation, only presence. Conversations started to bubble again, tentative at first. People exchanged surprised glances, some whispering about what had just happened. "Did you hear that?" one woman asked, barely above a whisper. "That was incredible. How could someone play like that?" Another person shook their head in disbelief, still holding onto the feeling of awe. No one needed to know her story yet. The performance had already told everything. Some approached her carefully, almost shyly. They spoke in soft voices, offering compliments, asking how long she had practiced, where she had learned to play. She answered simply, without exaggeration or pretense. Her voice was calm, steady, and warm. There was no need to impress anyone. The music had done that for her. She only shared what was necessary, letting her humility match the power of her performance. The boy could no longer contain himself. He leaned forward on the bench, eyes wide, and whispered again, "I want to play like that." She smiled gently at him, nodding in encouragement. "Keep practicing," she said softly, "and listen carefully. It will come." There was no magic in her words, only truth. Talent was born of dedication, and she had lived it. The boy felt inspired in a way that he would not forget for years. The room was full of people who had never seen her before, and yet they felt connected through the shared experience. Some were musicians themselves and understood the technical mastery of what she had played. Others had no musical knowledge but could sense the depth, the emotion, the power behind each note. It was a rare moment of connection that needed no explanation, only feeling. She decided to play another piece, something gentle this time, letting the audience recover from the intensity of the previous performance. Her hands moved over the keys with grace, creating a soft, flowing melody that contrasted with the thunderous energy of before. The people in the room leaned back slightly, their bodies relaxing into the music, allowing it to wash over them. They had seen her power, but now they could also feel her subtlety. It was a reminder that true skill is not just about volume or speed. It is about emotion, control, and storytelling. As she played, small groups gathered around the edges of the room. They were not intrusive. They simply wanted to witness more, to be near the source of the music. The boy's guardian allowed him to stand, holding him gently so he could see better. The little boy's eyes followed her fingers, trying to understand how such beauty could come from the piano. Every chord seemed to carry a story, a memory, a piece of her life. The audience felt it even without knowing the details. She noticed the attention but did not let it affect her. The music flowed naturally, effortlessly. Her focus remained on the piano, on the keys, on the story she wanted to tell. It was not performance for applause. It was performance for truth, for honesty, for the love of the sound. That authenticity was what drew people in, what made them feel connected to her even if they had just met her. The melody shifted again, becoming slightly more complex, weaving patterns that hinted at technical skill and years of practice. Her fingers moved with precision, yet the sound remained fluid, not mechanical. People watched, some leaning in closer, others closing their eyes to feel the music more fully. There was no rush, no need to impress further. She played for herself and for the shared moment with the audience. And in that, the room felt complete. A few members of the audience whispered about the discipline it must have taken to achieve such skill. They wondered about her life, her struggles, the hours spent in solitude, practicing, perfecting. They sensed that behind the quiet demeanor and simple appearance was someone who had poured her heart and soul into the piano for years. It was a humbling realization for many, a reminder that greatness often comes quietly before it is noticed. She transitioned into a section that was emotionally rich, letting her feelings guide the music. The notes became softer, more intimate, carrying warmth and vulnerability. People felt it, as if they were being invited into a private moment. The intensity of earlier had shown her power, but now her softness revealed her humanity. The contrast made the performance more complete, more relatable, more real. The boy's expression changed as he absorbed the new piece. He reached out to touch the keys, imagining himself playing like that one day. The guardian watched, smiling faintly, realizing that moments like this could shape a child's dreams. They did not know her story, nor did they need to. The music had spoken clearly enough, bridging generations, experiences, and understanding. She finished the piece with a long, lingering chord. The note seemed to hang in the air, as if reluctant to leave. Silence followed for a few heartbeats, then soft applause began, growing steadily. People were careful, not wanting to break the spell too quickly. The reaction was slower this time, more reflective, showing their appreciation for both the power and the subtlety she had displayed. Some people came forward, offering words of gratitude, expressing how moved they felt. Others simply stayed in their seats, letting the memory of the music imprint itself in their minds. She accepted it all quietly, nodding, smiling faintly, her presence calm and grounded. She did not seek recognition. She had shared what mattered most. The room seemed changed after that. There was a lingering warmth, a sense of shared experience that would stay with everyone long after they left. People glanced at each other, acknowledging silently that they had witnessed something rare. The music had brought them together, even briefly, and that connection was unforgettable. She finally stood, stretching slightly, but her expression remained composed. The piano had spoken fully, both loudly and softly, and she had given it her all. The boy whispered again, "I want to be like you," and she knelt briefly to meet his gaze. "Keep practicing," she said, her voice gentle. "It will take time, but it will come." He nodded earnestly, understanding that her advice carried the weight of experience. People started to leave slowly, still talking in hushed tones. The applause had faded, but the energy in the room remained, a quiet hum of admiration and reflection. She collected herself, checking that everything was in order, ensuring the piano was as it should be. Then she stepped back slightly, allowing the space to return to normal, even as its memory lingered for everyone present. The performance had ended, but its impact would be remembered for a long time, a reminder of the power of talent, dedication, and the quiet strength of a true artist. The hall was quiet now, almost completely still, as the last of the audience began to leave. Some lingered near the doors, reluctant to step back into the ordinary world after what they had witnessed. Others walked slowly, speaking in low voices, their expressions thoughtful and reflective. Even as they left, the echo of the music remained, a faint presence in the corners of the room, reminding them of what had just happened. She sat at the piano one final time, letting her hands rest lightly on the keys. The instrument had shared its voice fully, carrying her talent, her emotion, and her story to everyone who had been there. She did not rush to play again. There was a sense of completion, of calm satisfaction. Her breathing was steady, and a soft smile formed as she reflected on the performance. It had been everything she had hoped for, not because of the applause, but because she had shared a part of herself honestly and fully. She thought about all the years that had led to this moment. The early mornings when she practiced alone, the late nights filled with self-doubt, the countless hours of repetition that no one had witnessed. All of it had built toward this one day, this one performance, even if she had not known how it would be received. The piano had been a faithful companion through every challenge and every triumph, always there, always waiting, always responding to her touch. A few people had returned to speak to her once more, offering thanks, asking questions, or simply standing to soak in the energy that still lingered. She responded quietly, with gentle nods and soft words. She did not need to impress anyone with stories or explanations. The music had done the speaking, and it had spoken clearly. The appreciation she received was heartfelt, and she accepted it with humility, understanding that recognition was a side effect of doing what she loved, not the goal. The boy who had watched so intently throughout the performance stayed behind with the guardian. He was still wide-eyed, his small hands clasped together in awe. He looked up at her and whispered, "I want to play like that someday." She knelt slightly to meet his gaze, offering a small smile. "It will take time," she said softly. "Practice, patience, and listening. Keep playing and you will get there." He nodded seriously, understanding that her advice carried the weight of experience, and he felt inspired in a way that he would not forget for years. The guardian smiled as well, quietly acknowledging the impact the performance had on the boy. They did not know her story, nor did they need to. The music had already conveyed it all, the dedication, the skill, the emotion. They both realized that moments like this could change perspectives, ignite passions, and leave lasting impressions. The boy's admiration and the guardian's respect were proof that true talent could touch lives beyond the immediate audience. As she rose from the piano, she took one last look at the instrument. It had been through years of playing, both by her and others, and yet it still held its voice beautifully. The scratches and faded color were marks of history, not weakness. She appreciated it fully, understanding that every imperfection contributed to the richness of the sound. She gently closed the lid, a quiet gesture of respect and gratitude. People continued to trickle out of the hall, their conversations now filled with reflection rather than chatter. Some spoke of the technical skill they had witnessed, others of the emotional depth that had touched them unexpectedly. A shared understanding lingered in the air, a recognition that they had been present for something rare and remarkable. Even those who had initially been indifferent found themselves moved, their assumptions about ordinary appearances overturned by the extraordinary display they had seen. She walked toward the door with calm composure, her steps measured and quiet. Each movement was deliberate but unhurried, reflecting the balance she had shown throughout the performance. She did not seek attention, and yet her presence remained commanding. People watched her go, some offering soft words of thanks, others simply observing in silent admiration. She accepted it all without expectation, her satisfaction coming from within, from knowing she had given her best. Outside the hall, the air was cool and crisp. The world felt ordinary again, yet she carried the memory of the music with her, a quiet warmth that accompanied every step. She paused for a moment, taking in the night sky, the streetlights, and the subtle sounds of the city. It was a reminder that life continued beyond the performance, but that moments of extraordinary connection could exist anywhere if one had the courage and dedication to create them. She reflected on the journey that had brought her here. Every struggle, every small victory, every hour spent practicing in silence had contributed to this single day. She understood now that talent was not just about natural ability. It was about persistence, patience, and a willingness to pour oneself into something fully. The piano had been her partner in this journey, allowing her to express what words could not, to connect with others in ways that transcended language and circumstance. As she walked away, the echoes of her performance remained in the hearts of those who had witnessed it. The boy would remember the gentle rise and fall of her melodies, the careful shaping of every note, and the quiet confidence that radiated from her presence. The guardian would carry the understanding that true artistry was often accompanied by humility, patience, and a deep connection to one's craft. Others in the audience would recount the experience to friends, family, or even strangers, sharing the story of someone who had begun with a gentle warm-up and revealed a talent that thundered across the room. She did not need recognition. She did not need applause. What mattered was the connection, the shared experience, the proof that dedication and passion could create moments of beauty that touched people deeply. And in that, she found satisfaction. The world outside was ordinary, but she had brought something extraordinary into it, if only for a brief moment. That was enough. In the quiet aftermath, she knew that there would be more practice, more challenges, more moments of doubt. Yet she also knew that each note played, each chord struck, each pause taken with intention was a step forward. The piano would always be there, ready to listen, ready to respond, ready to carry her talent into spaces that had yet to be filled. And perhaps, in time, others would come to understand the depth of what she had shared tonight. She took one last look at the hall before stepping into the night. The lights behind her dimmed as the doors closed, leaving a quiet memory of music and emotion behind. The people who had witnessed her performance would carry it with them, quietly and persistently, in the same way she had carried years of preparation and practice to reach this point. Life would continue, but the memory of her music would remain, a gentle but persistent reminder of what dedication and talent could achieve when combined with passion and honesty.